In Edwardian London, one name echoed through the streets: Emily Dimmock. A story of intrigue, scandal, and unanswered questions that gripped the nation. But before we start, make sure you like and subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring you more stories like this. So get ready as we head to Camden Town. September 12, 1907. Around 11:30 in the morning in Camden Town, North London, Bertram Shaw returned home to his rented room at number 29 St. Paul's Road after working the night shift as a dining car chef on the Sheffield Express. He was 19 years old. He expected to find his common-law partner, Emily Dimmock, at home. Instead, he found the door locked. His mother was already waiting on the doorstep. She had tried to get in but received no answer. Bert went to the landlady of the house and borrowed her spare key. He opened the door and stepped inside. What he found would become one of Edwardian London's most infamous murder cases. Emily lay naked in their bed, slightly on her left side. Her throat had been cut from ear to ear with such force that her head was nearly severed from her body. Blood had soaked through the sheets and pooled on the floor beneath the bed. The front of her hair was still in curling pins. A back comb lay on the pillow as though it had fallen from her hair. On the washstand sat a basin filled with bloody water and one of Emily's flannel petticoats. The killer had used it to clean his hands before leaving. Police quickly arrived. The room told its story. The remains of supper for 2 people sat on the table. Some of Emily's belongings had been disturbed. A few trinkets and pieces of jewellery were missing. But this was not a robbery. The violence spoke of something else, something personal. Emily Elizabeth Dimmock was 22 years old. She was known to friends and clients as Phyllis. She had been born on October 20th, 1884, in the village of Standon in Hertfordshire. She came from a large family and had worked in a straw hat factory in Bedford before making her way to London. She had been living with Bertram Shaw as his wife, though they were not legally married. They had started their life together on Great College Street before moving to St. Paul's Road earlier that year. Bert believed Emily stayed home while he worked his night shifts on the railway. He thought she kept house, lived quietly, waited for him to return. He was wrong. Emily led a double life. During the day, she was a dutiful partner. Once Bert left for work, she returned to her previous occupation as a prostitute. She frequented the pubs along Euston Road, particularly the Rising Sun. She brought clients back to their room on St. Paul's Road. She earned money the only way she knew how. And Bert, working through the dark hours between London and Sheffield, knew nothing about it. Police quickly discovered the truth. Neighbours had seen men coming and going from the room when Bert was away. Emily was known in the local pubs. She solicited customers openly. The murder was almost certainly connected to her work. One of her clients had killed her while she slept, then cleaned his hands and walked away into the London morning. Detectives began piecing together Emily's final hours. She had been killed sometime between 3 and 6 in the morning on September 12th, based on examination of her stomach contents and the state of her body. The last person known to have been with her was a man she had met at the Eagle pub on Royal College Street on the evening of September 11th. Then came the discovery of the postcard. Bert found it while clearing out Emily's possessions after the murder. It had been hidden under papers in a chest of drawers. The card showed a picture from Bruges in Belgium. On it, someone had written a message arranging to meet Emily. The message read, "Phyllis, darling, if it pleases you to meet me at 8:15 at the," followed by a hand-drawn picture of a rising sun. It was signed Alice, to avoid arousing Bert's suspicions if he found it. The postcard had been sent on a Monday morning. Police had it reproduced in newspapers across London, including the News of the World. They hoped someone would recognize the handwriting. Someone did. Ruby Young saw the postcard in the newspaper. She recognized the writing immediately. It belonged to Robert Wood, a man she had been involved with. She told a friend who worked in Fleet Street. The information reached the police. They began looking for Robert Wood. Robert Wood was 30 years old. He worked as a commercial artist and glass designer for the Sandblast Manufacturing Company. He lived in Frederick Street, near King's Cross. He seemed respectable, educated, unlikely to be involved in murder. But witnesses placed him with Emily on the evening of September 11th. The postcard appeared to be in his handwriting, and he had been behaving strangely since the murder became public. Wood had met with Ruby Young and asked her to lie for him. He wanted her to say they had been together on the night of September 11th, that he had an alibi, that he could not have been with Emily. At first, Ruby agreed, but she could not keep the secret. The weight of it pressed on her. She went to the police. On October 4, 1907, police arrested Robert Wood as he walked down Gray's Inn Road. He was charged with the murder of Emily Dimmock. The case became a sensation. Newspapers followed every detail. The trial of Robert Wood opened at the Old Bailey in December 1907. The prosecution built their case on circumstantial evidence. They presented the postcard with its arrangement to meet. Handwriting experts testified it matched Wood's writing. They brought witnesses who had seen Wood with Emily at the Eagle pub on the night before her death. They showed charred fragments of what appeared to be a letter found in the fireplace at St. Paul's Road. The fragments seemed to be in Wood's handwriting. They painted a picture of what happened. Wood had met Emily and arranged to see her again. He had gone to her room on St. Paul's Road after Bert left for his shift. Something had happened between them. Perhaps she wanted more money. Perhaps he panicked about being discovered. Perhaps violence was always intended. Whatever the reason, he had taken a knife or razor while she slept and cut her throat. Then he had cleaned his hands, taken a few items to make it look like robbery, and left before dawn. The defense was led by Edward Marshall Hall, one of the most brilliant and famous advocates of the day. He fought for Robert Wood with passion and skill. Marshall Hall opened his examination of Wood with a dramatic question. "Robert Wood, did you kill Emily Dimmock?" Wood answered firmly, "Of course not. It is ridiculous." Marshall Hall attacked every piece of the prosecution's case. Yes, Wood admitted he had met Emily. Yes, he had sent the postcard. He had met her at the Rising Sun pub on Friday, September 6th. She had asked for a penny for the gramophone. He had bought her drinks. A boy had offered postcards for sale. Wood had better ones in his pocket, more artistic ones from his recent holiday in Bruges. Emily had chosen the one with the rising sun. He had written the message and posted it. He had met her again on the 11th at the Eagle pub. They had walked together, talked, then parted ways. He had gone home. He had not killed her. The handwriting evidence? Marshall Hall brought his own experts, who said the writing could belong to anyone. Handwriting analysis was not exact science. Similarities existed, but so did differences. The prosecution could not prove beyond doubt that Wood wrote the charred letter fragments. The witnesses? Marshall Hall questioned them relentlessly. How good was the lighting? How much had they drunk? How certain were they? Memory was unreliable. People made mistakes. And most importantly, there was no physical evidence. No blood on Wood's clothes, no weapon in his possession, no proof he had ever been in Emily's room. The case rested entirely on circumstantial evidence. Marshall Hall also raised questions about the alibi Wood had tried to create. If Wood was guilty and knew when Emily had died, why would he try to establish an alibi for the evening of September 11th, 8 or 9 hours before the murder occurred? It made no sense. An innocent man, frightened of being connected to a murdered prostitute, might panic and try to create a false story. A guilty man would know better. The trial lasted several days. the public gallery filled with actors, writers, artists. Crowds gathered outside the Old Bailey. The newspapers reported every word. Then the judge, Mr. Justice Grantham, summed up the case. He departed from the pro-conviction stance expected of judges at the time. He told the jury that although there was grave suspicion against Wood, he did not think the evidence was sufficient to justify a conviction. The jury retired to consider their verdict at 7:45 in the evening. They returned 15 minutes later at 8 o'clock. Not guilty. The courtroom erupted in cheers. The sound spread outside to the crowds in the street. Performances at London theatres were stopped so the verdict could be announced from the stage. Mrs. Beerbohm Tree, who had been a spectator in the court, delivered the news to her audience. Robert Wood walked free from the Old Bailey. But the verdict did not end the story. Wood's life was saved, but his reputation was destroyed. People whispered, people wondered. Some believed he was guilty and had escaped justice through brilliant legal defense. Others believed he was innocent and had been wrongly accused. He could never fully escape the shadow of the Camden Town murder. His employers had paid for his defense, covering legal fees estimated at £1,000. He returned to work, but kept a low profile for the rest of his life. Emily Dimmock's murder was never solved. Robert Wood was the only person ever charged. After his acquittal, the investigation went cold. Police had briefly looked at other suspects. Bertram Shaw had been cleared immediately. His alibi was watertight. He had been in Sheffield on the night of the murder, verified by his employer and witnesses. Another man, Robert Percival Roberts, a ship's cook who had slept with Emily on previous occasions, was investigated but never charged. His landlady and a friend confirmed he had been in his lodgings that night. There was also mention of a mysterious figure known as Scotty, a petty criminal named John William Crabtree, who had been in prison at the time of the murder, told police about this dark and malicious man who had threatened Emily. Scotty had been seen wielding a cutthroat razor. He apparently hated Emily for damage she had done to him and his family, but his real name was never uncovered. He disappeared into the fog of London's underworld and was never found.
Emily Dimmock was 22 years old when she died. She lived a hard life, working the streets to survive, while her partner believed she stayed home and waited for him. She was killed in the bed she shared with Bertram Shaw, murdered by someone who cut her throat while she slept and walked away. Her death became famous not because of who she was, but because of the trial that followed. She became the victim in the Camden Town murder, remembered more for how she died than for how she lived. The case became a landmark in English legal history. It was the first time since the passing of the Criminal Justice Act of 1905 that an accused man in a murder trial was acquitted after giving evidence on his own behalf. It raised questions that echo through British law to this day. How much circumstantial evidence is enough to convict? How reliable are eyewitnesses? What happens when there is suspicion but not proof? The artist Walter Sickert adopted the phrase "the Camden Town murder" for a series of paintings and etchings he created in 1908 and 1909. One painting, titled "What Shall We Do for the Rent?", is thought to be modeled on Emily Dimmock. The case inspired dramatizations on radio and television for decades afterward. Bertram Shaw lost the woman he loved and learned she had been living a double life. Robert Wood was acquitted but spent the rest of his life defending his innocence. Emily Dimmock was murdered and her killer was never brought to justice. The Camden Town murder remains one of Edwardian London's most famous unsolved cases, a mystery wrapped in doubt, suspicion, and unanswered questions.